Three, two, one. We are live. Hello, welcome everybody. This is the Purchase Optimized podcast. This is your host, Savannah Sanchez and Dara Denny. And today we have a very fun topic for y'all. We're going to be talking about agency life versus owning an agency or owning your own business. Dara and I come from very different yet similar backgrounds. Dara started as a founder and then made her way to be working as a media buyer at an agency, led the growth team there, now is working on all things creative there. I also started my media buying, like e-commerce journey at an agency as a media buyer, doing Facebook and Google ads and all that stuff. And then I went off and started my own business as a freelancer, where for a while I did a lot of media buying on Facebook and Snapchat. And in the last 6 months, really transitioned to more of the creative side of making UGC ads for clients. So I think we both have really interesting perspectives of what it's like working for an agency versus working for yourself, or even working for a brand as a media buyer or a creative strategist. Those are kind of the three main buckets that people fall in as having one of those career paths. And there's so many pros and cons to each as an employee or a business owner that sometimes you don't really think about, that aren't super obvious. And Dara and I were kind of spitballing on this earlier, and we thought it would be interesting to discuss for any media buyers or creative strategists out there that are wondering, like, what's life like on the other side? Is it better, worse, or just worse in other ways?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say this is like probably like we've been, having conversations now for like the last year and a half, and this is probably one of the biggest conversations that you and I have routinely is how's life on the other side? Like how is it like at the agency, or like I always want to know like how is it like having your own business? Because it's something that I flirt with a lot, but I am also someone that doesn't really want to start my own agency or business right now, but I see so many upsides. Um, but yeah, it's something that I personally struggle with, and I don't feel like I've solidified like what I'm going to do long term yet. But like some of the like, yeah. So I don't know. What would you say like some of the like positive things are from like running your own business like at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I'm happy with my choice of starting the Social
Mm-hmm.
Savannah in 2020. And here we are. I have multiple team members and content creators I work with. So I would say, in terms of positives, I'm someone that doesn't like a lot of meetings. And so just being able to
Oh God.
create my own schedule, block off time. I don't have anyone to report to. I can be like I personally have like a 4 meeting a day rule that I set on myself, where I'm only going to schedule 4 meetings so I can really get deep work done at other times. Of course, not going to an office is amazing. Choosing who you get to work with, choosing the processes that you follow, choosing the clients you get to work with and the terms that you
Yeah.
get to work with them on. I would say the biggest benefit is, from my experience working in an agency versus working with clients now, is that I don't have to work with any clients that I don't like, or have to
Oof.
play by their rules.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
Being able to be picky, like when I get on a call with a new client, and you can feel out a vibe of like they're going to be difficult, or they're already asking to change the payment terms and just being
Yeah.
picky and yelling at you or whatever. Like at an agency, you kind of have to just suck it up and be like, okay, well, this is just agency life. You're gonna get good clients, you're gonna get shit clients, but at the end of the day, you collect your paycheck, and you gotta cater to them all at some point. Where when I have like a client where I'm like, oh, I don't think this is a good fit. I think we're better off parting ways. And that's my favorite thing to do is dumping bad clients or just turning away bad clients, and it makes me be able to focus on the good ones. Like I love the
Yeah.
clients I work with, and at my agency that I used to work at, sometimes I would feel like I would spend so much of my energy catering towards the difficult clients, but I know that I couldn't piss them off because that's how the agency makes money. You got to keep your clients. So that struggle was difficult for me, but that's one of the major benefits, is telling people to fuck off.
Yes, I think that that's definitely like you mentioned two things that are definitely things that I struggle with as like an agency employee. Because again, like I'm a director of performance creative at the agency Thesis Testing. This is not like my agency. Like I am an employee of this agency. I've been working there a year and a half, and I am at a director level, which is awesome. But a lot of my days are clouded by meetings. It was a lot worse in my previous position. I used to be a director of growth where I managed a cross-functional team and had a lot more client comms. Now I'm pretty much starting up our creative agency inside of Thesis. So a lot of my meetings are mostly internal or with our creative heavy clients, which isn't as big as what we are on the growth side of things. So yeah, like there are days where I'm stacked in meetings, and the ability to say, hey, I'm only going to have 4 meetings like a day, that's just not like reality for an agency employee. Like if you say that to someone, like the only way that you could actually make that happen is like if you were like the manager overseeing all meetings. And unfortunately, it's like half the time I am the one calling these meetings because like
You're
I
the
need
problem.
to talk to someone because I need to like talk to a certain client. And since we're also like, I mean, we're fully remote. Well, remote for the most part. I'm more of a hybrid employee because I also go into the studio 2 to 3 times a week, which yeah, it's definitely like a huge downside to being an employee somewhere. And I think the other one too is, yeah, like I do get a pretty big say in the clients that we work with and the clients that we sign because I'm a part of the sales process. And the people that I work with in the leadership at Thesis, like do take my like opinions, and like my directives to like fire clients. They take those to heart. And like, there's been many times where we've acted on that, but I will say like, it's taken me like a while to earn that trust. And that's not really like afforded to someone who's not like at a director level either. So if you're like coming in as a growth manager or a growth associate or like a team lead and you're not in leadership, like you're not going to be able to make those calls. And to be honest, it's like when I look at some of the like growth managers at Thesis, and some of the creative strategists, I'm like, yeah, like for the most part, like we have really similar skill sets. But the thing and the reason why I'm a director is like mostly because of how I communicate and how I'm able to either like seal the deal or get things done with upper management. And like if a said growth manager or creative strategist wanted to go and start their own business, like that's something that's they're completely capable of. We've actually had a few people recently leave Thesis to start their own businesses, and now they're making way more money, and they're way happier because they get to control their schedule, and they also like are in a position of leadership and power. So it's something that I think about a lot for my long-term career. But some of the things that like make me nervous about going out on my own are like some of the negatives that like you and I have talked about before, which is like it's really hard to take time off when you have your own business. And you know, one of the really cool things about working at Thesis is like, oh, we have unlimited PTO, and like people use it. Like this is not a fake this is not like a fake perk. Like I'm going to be going to Italy next week with my boyfriend for like 7-8 days. And I said, hey, I'm not bringing my laptop. So
good luck.
Like I am deleting Slack, and you have all of the like, you know, here's my like out of office, like email and all the people you need to contact. Do not email me. Do not contact me. I will not be there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something you don't get working for yourself. Like yesterday I slept in pretty late and was catching up on work last night. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've only missed like half a day. And I'm already feeling like I have so many emails to reply to, so many things to attend to. So even like taking a vacation isn't something that's really possible for me right now. But I would say for me, the benefits 100% outweigh the negatives. I would say one thing with working at an agency is that it really allowed me to hone in on my craft and to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not underrated at all. Like to be able to focus all of your time on improving your skill set, doing what you do best is, I think, can be more fulfilling to some people and really make you a better marketer or media buyer, whatever you're working on. If that's all you have to focus on, and that's where you get to have experience and work with a lot of clients. And that's how I got my skills is working at an agency and working with a lot of clients there. When you work for yourself, you're not really honing in on your craft. At least not all the time. Like I'm worried about payroll and collecting on invoices and sales
Yeah.
calls and just keeping the ship running. And that's really what my role is now. Is I'm just in charge of processes. Like I have my creators, I have my editors, I have my clients, and my job is to make sure that everyone is going through the exact same process and that the process leads to really great ads. And so all I'm thinking about is how do I optimize the processes to make sure that clients are happy with the ads. But ultimately, it all comes back to how are we doing project management? How are we communicating? How are we getting revisions? How are we working with people? And that's where I'm focusing all the time. Whereas I have a really amazing employee named Natalie, and her job is to 100% focus on making amazing TikToks. And she is an amazing creator, editor, genius when it comes to making creatives. And it would be remiss to have her also like on sales calls, helping with invoicing,
Yeah.
helping with project management. Like I feel like I'm speaking for her. Hopefully she's listening. She probably is. I think that,
Hey, Natalie.
hey, we love you.
We do.
I think it would, because I think it's so special if you can really just focus all of your time on your craft and not have to focus on bullshit. And as a business owner, you do have to, you take the good with the bad, like we've mentioned. Like there is like chasing up on invoices and people getting
Yeah.
pissed off, and you're pulled in a million directions because ultimately it's coming back to you. So yeah, it's a lot of stuff that's not related to marketing that I do now. Whereas if you are a really passionate creative strategist, you may be able to thrive at an agency or a brand where you get to focus on that all day long and you don't have to worry about revising a contract that a client wants like 28 revisions to and going through those with them and going back and forth.
Do you still do like most of the client comms for like your clients? And like I know that you now limit a lot of your meetings per week. Like are there many clients that you just like generally don't meet with then? Or like how do you like keep up with those comms?
Yeah, so I would say like I still kind of refer to myself as a freelancer, even though I have like a team of creators and editors who help me because I am the only one talking to my clients. I love Trello.
Yeah.
I live on Trello. That's the project management tool I use for all communication, all revisions on project management. Everything lives in Trello, and I think that's enabled me to not have to have meetings, especially for the clients that I'm working with just on creatives. I find that I can get all of it done digitally and not have, and I refuse to have meetings with creative clients because I think that it can all happen through Trello because I've seen it happen successfully digitally all the time. So I limit myself. I'm like, no, sorry.
And all of those comms are like async then, right? Like
Yeah,
so you're
yeah.
not like you okay, that's cool.
Yes.
That's really
Yeah.
cool.
It's like, hey, next week we want an ad focusing on swimwear. And I'm like, okay, we could do that. So I'm on Trello a lot.
Yeah.
Like I'm every day I'm going through notifications, but if a client wants to hop on a call about creative, I'm like, no, sorry, like you need to type it out and I will respond in hours. I'm on Trello 24/7. So limiting calls has really helped me a lot. I do have some clients where I do their media buying like on TikTok. And for those, I found like a once a month check-in is helpful to go over like reporting and performance. I think with media buying, it does require like that like once
It
a month
does.
like check in. I know some clients like we'd really like a weekly check in. And I'm like, well, then go somewhere else because that doesn't work with my process. I know that we can communicate through Trello and get everything done. And if we can't, then then something's broken there. Because if I've seen it being done a million times over, like I've worked with other clients and we've all been able to get great ads and communicate through this platform. And if you're not able to get it done through there, then I'm like, then this isn't a good fit. And I think that's with owning your own business, you have to have a process and stick with it. and you cannot make exceptions for any client. And yeah, it will completely destroy you once you start. Like if someone starts emailing you or texting you or they want to hop on a call, like it can derail everything. So sticking to the process has been so important to me, and just making sure that process results in good ads. At the end of the day, it's all the clients care about. Are they getting good ads? Yes, they're going to stay.
Yeah.
So that's really all I'm doing.
I think it's interesting too that like you say your role now is largely about being an enforcer of this process. The irony of all ironies is that that is also my job. And so I feel like at some point when you're doing the agency thing, it's like, you know, you can either break off and start your own business, or you can become like a director level or like a VP level, and you're still like creating and enforcing and breaking and then repairing this process. For me, I think the safety net that I appreciate is like, my agency knows that I'm a creator. Like I'm on YouTube. That's like the main draw for like having me is like, oh, she actually makes videos and I make tons of content for my clients. And like, I do have like a big strategy. Like I like play a big role in the strategy for many of our clients for that. So while I am like still an enforcer of this process, by no means am I like really the only person that this process like relies on, because I just couldn't do it. Like I have a senior director who helps me a lot with like coming up with new processes, figuring out why they're breaking, and I have a really solid team that I can help support me in this area where frankly like I just don't like it. Like I don't, the process stuff, like it's just not my jam. I'm just not good at it. I know that for my career, like I need to get better at it to like proceed. But where I'm at now, it's like Thesis is kind of providing me the ability to be like a creative director of sorts, where they're giving me a process, and if I notice it breaking, which it does all the time, then I have a team to like help support me in making it better. And I think that's like one thing that I'm nervous about like going out on my own is like, number one, I'm afraid of like leaving the safety net of the team, and like having people that are a lot smarter than me being able to fix the things that I break and I'm not good at. How do you think that you've been able to like stay nimble and scale without having like other people? Like how do you still like communicate with other people and like make your process better and better?
Sure. I think my process evolved so much. It always kind of starts as a shit show, and then day by day you say, okay, why is this taking so much time? Okay, this is making this more difficult. So I would say like give yourself the flexibility and grace that you're not going to start out great at it, and that it takes time to develop one that works well for your business. And then I would say just keeping it organized, like having like one thing I always tell clients, I'm like, I am not on Slack. Slack is not a project management tool. I hate Slack.
Shh, don't tell them. All the agencies are listening.
Because it's abused. And if I know some people who are in like 20 client Slacks, and I worked at an agency where I was in 20 client Slacks, and your entire day is going through Slack. And I think that's an ineffective use of my time. I would rather have Trello boards and cards specific to project management where I can go and check on the progress of a project, see client comments, reply there. It's all housed in one space. It's not housed in a conversation. So I think the first thing is like recognizing what tools you need to get there. I think Trello is superior, but I think Asana or Monday, like every one of those kind of accomplish the same thing of organizing a project from start to finish. That's really all we're doing at the end of the day for any business is organizing projects and getting team members together. So I would say like really becoming an expert of those platforms, like because I've been using Trello since 2020 now, starting my business, like I've done so many like YouTube tutorials and figured out like different add-ons to make things easier. Like, oh, this auto adds the comment, this does this and that, this syncs this board to this. I've really delving into like, how do I become like an expert project manager, and how do I use these tools to get there? So I would say that that's really what it comes down to, is like figuring out the medium. So pick your tool. They'll all get you there. Becoming an expert at that tool, and then sticking to the process. That's all my day is about, is like, if a client's asking for something that's out of the process, I say no. So I'm saying no a lot more than I'm saying yes. Like,
and
no,
I think a lot of people are scared of that too.
Totally. That's the problem.
Yeah, there is definitely like a huge anxiety I think that agency folk have. Like, in a way, like, I am definitely a recovering people pleaser, which made me a great agency worker. Like, it made me a great
100%.
yeah, it made me a really great like growth manager or like digital ads manager when I first started, because I would go the extra like 50 miles for a client that was always going to be unhappy. But it's like, you have processes in place so that like you can say no, essentially, and saying no to people is actually going to get you better work in the long run. Like,
100%.
For what it's worth, like, we use Asana. Do I think it's a great project management software? Like, no, I don't. Exactly. I hate it. But it's like, I don't really know why I hate it. I think I just hate it because I hate to be managed.
I hate Asana.
But like,
I used to use. So I have an anger against Asana.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not great. But it's like, today, me and a video editor, we were going over another type of founder ad today, just doing some iterations together. And we were going through the Asana like checklist and trying to find more hooks and stuff, and he was worried about this piece of client feedback, and I was like, no, like, we're not reshooting anything.
Hell no.
Because we're not at that point in the process anymore. Like, that ship has sailed. So we say no.
Yeah.
And like, when we were looking at the process and like what we had to work with, it was like really the process that allowed us to say no. So I think that's a great point. But yeah, I like what you said too about becoming like a master of the platform. It's really just about finding which one you like best. Like, yeah, I don't like Asana, but I also work for an agency, so is it my choice?
Really well.
No.
I mean, I think people use Asana and they probably use it so well, and it's like the best thing ever. I think something that brand owners or even business owners in general do is they like, okay, we need project management. Okay, here's Asana, and then like just let things run rampant and wild. There's no process within it, and where the process is broken.
Yeah.
So like figuring out having a project management tool is like step 1 of like 100. Like, now you have to like figure out how to use it effectively.
Yeah.
Keep reiterating off of that.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
The fact that you have like a subscription to Asana does not mean you have a good process.
Exactly.
I would say like one last note on just like saying no to people. That's something that I would say I also struggled with at the beginning, and as a freelancer, with the uncertainty of like, I need to keep clients, I need to keep getting clients. That's something to really easily fall into that trap of, well, I can't lose a client. That's like half my salary. So I will say yes. And that's, I would say, like the biggest like pitfall of like, new agency owners or new freelancers, is understanding that you can say no, and that it will totally benefit you in the long run. Because the more time you spend on a client that's difficult and is asking for something out of scope, that takes away the time from your good clients who are happy with your work, are asking for the things that are within the realm that they're entitled to, and recognizing that I only want to work 8 hours a day. I'm not the type who wants to be a workaholic. And so how I spend that 8 hours is so important. If you are responding to requests that are outside of scope or difficult, you're going to spend all of your energy on that and leaving very little energy for the good clients and the ones that are actually following the process. So the more you can say no to the bad clients and be like, no, sorry, like this isn't a good fit, or no, I can't do that. either two things will happen. Either the client will leave and then you'll have so much more time for your other clients or to get new clients who are going to fit your process. Knowing that your process is good is number one. Like I know that if someone comes to me and they want UGC, they're going to get the best damn ads every single week. So I have first of all, it's like I have confidence and trust in the process. And so as long as I follow that, and as long as I can allow myself to say no or part ways with the clients that are asking for stuff outside that, I'm like, hey, this isn't a good fit. The second thing that happens, actually way more often than not, is clients will conform to your requests. They will, as a client, clients will ask for things outside of scope or may want something a bit more difficult that they're not entitled to. And just saying no, then they'll back off. They'll be like, oh, okay. And I think people aren't respecting that. Like as with work at an agency or if you have your own agency, they're so afraid to say no because they're like, oh, they're going to quit or they're going to freak out. Most of the time, they're just like, oh, all right. Like, and even clients where I've said, like, because I do creatives for clients and sometimes they'll give so much feedback. Like you said, they want reshoots, they hate it. I'm like, look, I'm creating these ads based off of concepts and hooks that I know to perform best. Here's like the reasons, like I always try to explain why. Like these are the data-driven reasons why we're doing this, and this is why we shot it this way. I think that I'm not a good fit for you because every week you seem to be unhappy. And then they come back and they're like, oh, no. Like we're actually really happy and they're performing well. And then they just just kind of stop being difficult and then they're good from there on out. Sometimes you kind of have to call them out on like, hey, like you seem like you're giving a lot more feedback than all my other clients. And to be quite frank, this amount of revisions isn't part of my process. And it sounds like we're not a good fit. Then most of the time they'll back off and they'll just be like, oh, okay, sorry. Like they don't want to lose you. Like they're like, oh, we actually really like your ads. Like the fact that I'm coming to them and like not quitting on them, but just even saying like, hey, like I think we should part ways. Then they're like, oh no, we're not parting ways. Like we love the ads. And they learn that they're not entitled to ask for 20 reshoots every time because otherwise they're not going to have me.
I definitely experience this a lot on the agency side as well. And I think it's, feedback works both ways. Like I've learned that you have to also give clients feedback on the best way that they can deliver their feedback to you. Or, you're also, when we say we're working with clients, we're not just working with like brand owners in some cases. Like sometimes we're working with another like marketing director. Sometimes we're working with like a marketing coordinator or like someone that doesn't really have any idea about like what we're doing on the UGC. There's so many other players. And I actually had this instance recently where we were getting feedback overload from multiple different people. Like there's like a brand marketing manager, and then there was like a media buyer that was giving our team direction. And it was not good feedback. And when I dug into it, I kind of realized like these people are just kind of trying to justify their jobs because it is a line item on their job description to quote unquote manage the agency relationship. And that not all of that feedback is applicable. And you as a leader and as like someone who's running creative strategy need to know how to digest what is good feedback and what is bad feedback. Just because a client tells you, hey, I think this way would be better, that's actually an opportunity for you to say no, and you will be giving them a better service if you tell them when they're wrong. Like I recently, same client, they gave us some really, really strict guidelines for the type of housing and locations that we were going to be shooting in, and pretty much only said luxury, like apartments and houses only. And I initially took that feedback and I was like, holy shit, like there's no way that this is going to be profitable. What am I going to do? Like rent out like massive Airbnbs every single weekend in like Connecticut or like like in the Hamptons? Like this is fucking awful. Yeah. And then when I took a step back, I was like, oh wait, like I don't actually think that'd work. And I'm taking this feedback as directive to myself and my team when really I need to go back to the client and be like, hey, you know what? Like I'm going to tell you why you're wrong, because there's actually nothing in the data and nothing in your creatives that have worked thus far that is telling us we need to be pure luxury and we need to be purely aspirational. So like regardless if you are like, running your own agency or you're working for an agency, being able to know when feedback from the client is bad and you need to push back, that is a skill that, like, I wish I could have developed sooner, and it's something that you're going to need regardless of where you go, or else people are going to walk all over you. I'd say that, you have to be protective of your bandwidth. And if you are an agency employee, like, and you want to move up in the industry and you want to become a director, like, you can't just be protective of your time. Then you're going to have to look out for your team's time. Like, I find myself constantly, I have to worry a lot more about, how, like, client feedback and client requests is going to affect my video editors, or how it's going to affect the creative strategists, or like other people on other teams, because, just regardless of where you end up, like, being able to protect yourself in that way is going to be of the utmost importance. And yeah, I guess, like, either way, when you start, like, progressing in your career, you're going to, in some ways, manage this process and, like, be entrepreneurial in a way. Like, I feel like at Thesis, I am starting something that's, like, very new. That could be easily something that I could just start on my own. But right now, I like doing it with, like, I like doing it under the Thesis wing. Like, I like my team. Like, we were recently acquired by a big agency out in Connecticut called Barrington Media Group. And with that has come with a lot of, like, really great opportunities to learn about TV advertising and podcast advertising and radio. So, like, what you were talking about, too, about being able to, like, double down and hone in on your craft, like, I still feel like there's, like, a lot of opportunity for me, agency side, to, like, explore different types of mediums. And it's something that I want to do a little bit more before I go and start my own thing, because I think that when and if I do, like, I want to be able to have, like, a bigger, like, I want to be, like, a bigger production house, so to speak. Like, I want to be able to span a little bit outside of paid social, and, like, staying under this agency, which is now a much bigger agency, is, like, affording me, like, the ability to do that. But yeah, like, there's a lot of meetings and a lot of bullshit sometimes.
You take the good with the bad, honestly. There's good and bad to both. Not one is better than the other, for every person and circumstance. I think, of course, it depends on your employer, what agency you're working with, what brand you're working under, how you are running your own business. I know people who have their own business and they're absolutely miserable because they're working all the time.
Yeah.
And they're just overwhelmed. And I know that they wish that they could just leave at 5, have a regular job, make good money doing that, instead of like living this, like, hustle life of working nonstop.
Yeah.
Not saying you have to do that to have your own business. I definitely didn't choose that route, but there is sacrifices you have to make, and time that you have to put in, especially at the beginning, that I wouldn't say is necessarily better than working a full-time job, especially depending on the situation you're in. You might be in a really good situation. The grass isn't always greener. And I think one last comment just on, like, the client communication point, because I thought you made such a great comment about the feedback aspect. I would say one thing to always keep in mind is that clients are hiring you to do something that they are not good at. Like, that's why they're hiring you, because you are the expert. Yeah. They're not an expert in this, therefore they want to work with you because you're the expert. And so just keeping that in mind, and that's how you can frame feedback. Like you said, like, hey, we've seen this work well, or this doesn't work because we've tested it with this. And if you are only listening to the client's feedback, which may not be great, then the end product isn't going to be something good. And if that's what you stand behind, like what I stand behind is, like, do the ads perform? That's all I care about. Everything in my process is, like, I want to give you ads I know perform. And if their feedback is a prohibitor to that, because I know that if we take out the clip that they don't like or change the hook, it's not going to perform as well, then I can't stand behind those ads of, like, because I'm like, okay, this is your creation based off what you think is going to work well, but I know it's not going to work well. And then ultimately they're going to be mad at me. They're going to be like, oh, your ads suck. I'm like, well, they only suck because I changed them to do everything you want them to do. Or I had to work between your very strict guidelines. So I think that's something to keep in mind too. It's like, you're the expert. People are hiring you to be the expert in your field. And giving clear, kind feedback is something that you just have to be a master of, and learning to say no.
Clear and kind feedback, it flows both ways. So, you know, when you feel like clients are giving you a lot of feedback, it's actually just okay to call that out and say, I think the line that you had earlier, which was just like, hey, you're giving a lot more feedback than we normally get, or, potentially this is not a fit, like, or I get the sense that you're not happy. Those kind of like trigger statements often cause people to, just become, they stop playing the game, and they're like, oh, like maybe I was being too controlling or too forthright or whatever. And we've been able to, like, I've actually taught many of my growth managers, like, hey, like, use these trigger statements if you feel like things are getting too tough in a call. And a lot of times, like, people will back down. Like, at the end of the day, for most clients, like, we're making ads. Like, this is not like life or death here. And
we're all on the
we definitely
too, right? Like, we all want the ads
right,
to
yeah.
perform well. Like, that's one thing too. Like, when clients are acting like I'm working against them, like, yo, like, I'm here to help you. Like, let's help each other. We're like, I'm not the enemy here.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I know we said we were going to make this last 20 minutes, and then this was supposed to be a conversation about agency versus like agency ownership life, and it turned into about client feedback, which I love. But yeah, I think we're going to end it here.
Amazing. Well, this has been the Purchase Optimized podcast. If you have enjoyed this, make sure to give us a like, a comment on any platform that you're listening to this to. And we want your feedback too. Hopefully clear and kind feedback, constructive, good feedback like we talked about today. What topics do you guys want to hear about? What you like, what you don't like? We want to hear it all. We're really excited to keep these conversations, and the listeners, of course, a huge part of this conversation. We want to talk about what's important to you. So keep us posted.
Exactly. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for everyone who tuned in and stayed to the end. You'll hear from us next week.
Peace.